What's up guys, today I'm gonna assemble and review the Armadillo Builder figure. So far this wave has been quite a mixed bag in terms of quality of the action figures. So let's go ahead and assemble this guy and see what it's like. I usually like to start assembling from the legs first. The legs are easy enough to pop on, you wouldn't need any heat to get them firmly attached. And then slowly we build the rest of his body by popping his arms in. Popping the back piece of his armor plate on. This peg should go right in over here. This armor plate is pretty flexible, so you can just pop it over his shoulders. And now for the finishing touch, we pop his head on. He's got no accessories, so let's just jump in looking into his sculpt. I do believe he's a brand new sculpt, so that was definitely one of the reasons why I picked up the entire wave to build him and have him in hand. Zooming into his head sculpt, he is sculpted with a sneer, gritting his teeth and looking ready to run into battle. His skin tone is a pale yellow, and he's got that digital print technology for the white paint in his eyes, the same whites of his teeth, as well as a little bit of pinks for his gums. All this paint is super sharply applied. I really like the work done over here. On the outside of his head, he's got a light brown plastic armor piece. This brown armor piece is probably super glued on and attached as a separate piece. So you can see over here it's not assembled so well on my copy. There's a gap where that armor is supposed to sit onto that head. This armor has got scales sculpted all over it as we move around to the sides as well as the top and the back. It's also clearly sculpted to show you that it's made out of several plates of armor put together, much like the armor of an actual armadillo. And here at the top we can see a little bit of orange wash just to bring out that texture, so that's a nice touch. Moving back to his torso is that same pale yellow plastic, but this time it's also given a nice white sort of wash, and that paler shade kinda looks like the soft underbelly of an actual armadillo as well. There's detailed sculpting for the muscles over here, so that's also once again really nice work. Those muscles even look like they are made out of armor plates, especially over here in the ab area. You can see there's quite an angular sculpting in between all those muscles. Moving on to the side of the figure to his arms, there's that similar pale shade of yellow for his shoulders, and then the rest of his arm on the outside is covered by that brown armadillo armor. Similarly made out of separate pieces of armor plates, and each plate is also covered with that scaly texture. Onto the insides of his arm, it also has that white wash, and on his hands he's got gigantic claws that are sculpted with pointy ends and also painted in a dark grey. The sculpting of the textures on the inside of his arm is also quite impressive because it looks like a coarse animal hide with visible wrinkles in the rough skin. And now let's move on to the back of his torso that is covered by that gigantic armor plate. Once again, there are also these large segments of armor plates, and each plate is also covered with those scales. They're sculpting just to show a little hint of battle damage here and there with the cracks and dings and dents. The top of the armor also has a subtle shading of orange, once again to bring out that contrast and make the armor interesting to look at instead of just being a single shade of brown. But once again, because there's shading on top of the armor, it makes the armor on the sides of his arms look kind of plain because it's missing that orange wash. Moving on to his legs, that armor plating is also similarly well sculpted, and this time it also has that subtle orange wash on the front of the thighs. There's also sculpting work to show cracks from battle damage, and when you look on the insides of his legs, they're also that pale yellow plastic with definition for muscles as well as that rough animal hide texture. However, this time the insides of the legs are not given that white paint wash. Moving on to his feet, they also have armor on top of them, and they also have long, curved, sharp nails painted in dark grey. So all the armor pieces on this figure are indeed separate pieces of brown plastic that contrasts quite well with the pale yellow shade of the animal hide beneath. So the effect of Armadillo actually having external armor plating is practically achieved by having all these separate plastic pieces of armor assembled onto that pale yellow base body. So this definitely makes the figure feel like it's literally wearing a separate armor by having all these plastic pieces assembled together. So I definitely appreciate this practical aspect of assembly on this figure. On to articulation, his head is on a double ball dumbbell joint, so you can get him to swing his head left as well as right. You can also tilt his head slightly left as well as right. For a big figure, he really needs to look down, but that's as far as you can get. And he can look up just that little bit. He's got a swivel hinge at the shoulder so he can swing his arms forward as well as backward, and the arms also go out that far. But that will pop that back plate armor off. I might want to glue that peg for the back armor into his back. But as you can see, after I've attached the back plate on, the armor is actually soft enough to conform and let his arms swing outwards. So I'm pleasantly surprised with the flexibility in this armor plate. He's got a bicep swivel so you can swing his arms out as well as in. He's got a single jointed elbow, and that gets you just about 90 degrees. Not too bad for a big bulky armored dude. He's got a swivel hinge at his wrist so he can swing in as well as out and articulate his wrist in as well as out. He's got a mid-torso ball joint so you can tilt him right as well as left. He also gets quite a good ab crunch forward and just a little bit of ab crunch backwards. The great thing I noticed over here is that the whitewash also goes into that ball joint, so that's also great work on that paint. You can also get him to rotate, but that joint starts to feel a little gummy, so you will need to kind of shimmy him like forward and backward as you twist his torso in order to get him to rotate. He's got ball jointed hips, so that gives you quite a good spread outwards, more than enough for a big bulky dude. You can also get him to kick forward and that joint feels detented. There's also a little bit of backward kick as well. There's an upper thigh swivel, and that's where you actually connect the Build-A-Figure leg so you can swing him outwards as well as inwards. He's got a single joint at the knee, and that gets you almost 90 degrees. He's got ankle tilt downwards that much, but once you go upward, he seems like he doesn't have much range, because of the armor plate on the top of his foot colliding with the armor plate on his shin. But you can actually slide his foot over the bottom of this shin armor, so you do get a little bit of upward tilt. And finally, he has some ankle pivot outwards as well as inwards. He's a big guy and he's solid and sturdy. He's quite fun to mess around with, but this is probably the deepest stance that you can get him into due to the limited upward ankle tilt. So right now I'm gonna modify the ankle joint just to get a little bit more upward tilt out of it. What I'm gonna do is slice off a little bit of this pale yellow plastic just above the joint but below the armor plating so it wouldn't show. So now I've sliced off that strip of plastic. This is what it looks like before and after. And now sliding his foot over that shin armor plate to get that maximum range of upward ankle tilt. You can see that there is definitely some improvement in range. Here is a quick look from the insides of the ankles as well. You can see that there is a slight upward improvement in ankle tilt over here. And once you get his ankle back to a neutral angle, that loss of plastic in that ankle isn't really obvious. So even if you're not good with a knife, you don't actually have to make it look real pretty. Just be careful as you cut to remove just that amount of plastic. And now I've also done the same to remove that strip of plastic on his right ankle. And now I am glad to report that I'm able to get him into a one-legged running stance. The better range of angle articulation definitely helps to get him into a more stable footing so that he can balance in this one-legged running stance. Armadillo is a big boy and he stands at about 8 inches or just over 20 centimeters. For some size comparisons, here he is with some of the recent bigger Build-A-Figures like Ursa Major and Gameverse Abomination. He towers over Spider-Man and is bigger and bulkier than Rhino. His size is exaggerated when put beside Captain America, but he's still shorter than the Hulk. And here he is also with Iron Man and Black Widow. As for comparisons with other lines, here he is with some G.I. Joe Classified series and some Star Wars Black series. Armadillo is a chunky, hefty figure and feels great in hand. The back plate might fall off as you handle him and the ankle upward tilt is limited. But you can fix these issues by gluing the back plate and trimming some plastic from his ankle. The biggest quality of this figure is that it is assembled from separate brown armor plates. And this makes the figure look and feel like it's wearing a real layer of armor. It's definitely worth getting the wave just to build the Armadillo Build-A-Figure. Please like and share this video, let me know what you think in the comments below, and subscribe to my channel for more toy reviews. Also, don't forget to check out my new TikTok account in the description below. Thanks for watching, take care and stay safe.